Part of the appeal of indie games is that so many of them remind us of our favorite retro games through the use of pixel art. All pixels are beautiful after all, and don't you forget it. There is a certain charm to pixel art that is timeless, and games that use this visual approach still manage to feel relevant all of these years later. Here are 15 indie games with stunning pixel art that we love playing. You know what else we would love too? If you would check out our Patreon page over at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. You'll gain Discord access, early ad-free shows, a brand new podcast, shoutouts at the end of every video that we produce, and even free games depending on your tier. Your community is waiting for you. Also be sure to head over to twitch.tv/idreamofindiegames where OK Nia is streaming all of the latest indies every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's a blast over there and we hope you will follow. Alright then, let's get into the list. Number 15 is Dragon Marked for Death, which is a 2D side-scrolling action RPG developed and published by Inti Creates that can be played single-player or with up to 3 additional players. From the start of the game, 4 characters will have an assigned class, with more being unlocked through additional gameplay hours. Players will engage in quests that include protection of people, finding treasures, defeating a certain enemy, sealing gates, and obtaining information. How well you perform in a quest is very important as it will have an impact of which ending you receive. You'll travel through forests, cities, castles, caverns, and snow-covered mountains, all portrayed with beautiful pixel art. Dragon Marked for Death is a rather unique RPG experience, and I recommend it for fans of action RPGs who would like to play something a little bit different from other games within the genre. Next, we have what many consider an indie classic, The Messenger. The Messenger is a combination of different styles. Not only does it alternate between 8-bit and 16-bit pixel art, but it also begins as a linear 2D action platformer and then becomes a Metroidvania later in the game. Players will control a mysterious ninja, I guess aren't they all, who's on a mission to deliver a scroll that is important to his clan's future. Sadly, his village has been destroyed by a demon army. The Messenger is a bit all over the place, involving a cursed world and time travel, all portrayed in excellent detail with phenomenal pixel art. While the story might sound rather dark like many other ninja revenge plots, it's also approached with a sense of humor that gives it somewhat of a lighthearted tone. This works to surprising effect. Combining various concepts seems to be a recurring theme throughout The Messenger, and it pulls it off with masterful precision. I personally consider The Messenger a must-play for fans of both Metroidvanias and 2D action platformers, and yes, the art is to die for. So maybe I'm cheating a little bit at number 13, but the whole series of these games has great pixel art featured throughout. Yes, we're talking about the Shovel Knight games. Developed and published by Yacht Club Games, the Shovel Knight series recreates the charm of the 8-bit pixel art style and brings it to the modern era with an action platformer that takes influence from many different genres. Shovel Knight himself has become an iconic figure in indie gaming that is pretty instantly recognizable these days. It isn't just about our hero, however, as all of the playable knights have a great design to them with a whole lot of charm. The main games in this franchise are action platformers in a retro style, but with a modern twist that will likely appeal to many generations of gamers. The spin-off games provide a novel experience for fans of the series by including elements of other genres. In combining an 8-bit aesthetic with modern controls and touches, the Shovel Knight games are some of the great examples of how to pay homage to some of the greatest games of our past. Next up is Jack Move, a cyberpunk RPG developed by So Romantic and published by Hype Train Digital. Players will control Noah Solaris, a hacker who is fighting against a megacorporation connected to the disappearance of her father. Players will also explore a high-tech dystopian environment and engage in turn-based combat that's menu-driven and includes a form of attack that will remind you of Final Fantasy VI if you've ever played that game, as Sabin's Blitzes. There's also an option in the game to perform moves automatically if you prefer that. Running at about 10 hours in length, Jack Move is a short but sweet experience that will nicely scratch that itch if you're looking for something in the JRPG style. Odallus, The Dark Call is at number 11, and it's a game that combines Classicvania and Metroidvania elements in an 8-bit style to create an impressive action exploration title. Developed and published by Joymasher, Odallus takes place in a dark fantasy world where players will control a warrior desperate to save his land after it's become overrun with monsters and seemingly abandoned by its gods. The progression is handled with a map-based system similar to Castlevania III Dracula's Curse, in which you can choose different routes. If exploring a fascinating 8-bit dark fantasy world and engaging in memorable boss fights sounds like your kind of thing, then give Odallus a try. At number 10, we have a game developed by Pixpill and published by Chucklefish, Eastward, which is an action-adventure title set in a post-apocalyptic world. A toxic presence has forced humans to move underground, and players will control Sam and John as they travel through a subterranean environment searching for an area above ground that is still habitable. The civilization that formed underground has become tyrannical and is an obstacle for them on their journey. Other challenges they will face include giant insects, killer robots, mutants, and zombies, all of which are portrayed in beautiful pixel art that has a cute and quirky charm to it. The towns, tunnels, and dungeons may be bleak, yet they are a pleasure to behold. Eastward is often considered one of the great indie action-adventure games for the year it released, and it truly deserves all of the praise it receives. Moving forward, with number 9, we have Galguardian's Demon Purge, another game that combines Classicvania and Metroidvania elements with wonderful success. Developed and published by Inti Creates, this is a spin-off of the Galgun series where players will control the demon-hunting sister duo of Shinobu and Maya. There is a single-player mode where control of the characters can be alternated with the press of a button. Even better, the game features a full-fledged two-player mode where each player controls one of the characters. While the structure of the game is level-based for the most part, there is some backtracking so you can return to previous levels and access areas you previously couldn't reach once you have the appropriate abilities, which will allow you to bypass certain obstacles in the level. Everything takes place in a school that has been transformed into a demonic castle. It's all really good, silly fun. I like the gothic horror style. It's quite the feast for the eyes too with that gorgeous pixel art. So if you're a fan of both Classicvania and Metroidvania titles, then Galguardians is a must-play. At number 8, we have a title developed and published by DYA Games, Evil Tonight, a title that takes survival horror back to its 2D roots with action-adventure gameplay, kinda similar to Shiryo Sensei War of the Dead 2. While survival horror is often associated with 3D games like the Resident Evil and Silent Hill titles, there were games that fit the modern definition of the genre in the 8-bit and 16-bit eras like Sweet Home, the Shiryo Sensei games, and the first Clock Tower game. Evil Tonight has some similarities to those, but also brings a modern polish to the gameplay that will appeal to both retro and modern gamers. Players will control Sylvia, an exorcist on a mission to rid an abandoned performing arts school of the horrific creatures who haunt those grounds. Every room in the school has a unique look, and all of it is portrayed in a lovely 16-bit pixel art style. The visuals have a very strong SNES vibe to them, and had it been released on that console, it would have been one of the better looking releases for it. If the idea of survival horror in 2D appeals to you, then Evil Tonight is something you will find very satisfying. This next release is one that some of you might be familiar with. It's Astalon, Tears of the Earth, a Metroidvania in an 8-bit pixel art style that has a lot of charm. Developed by Labs Works and published by Dangan Entertainment, Astalon is a great mix of retro and modern elements that brings both great action and exploration to the table. It also has an interesting feature where death is actually necessary for progression because it allows players to access an area where the orbs you have collected can be exchanged for upgrade abilities for your characters. The story involves a band of heroes attempting to save their world that is dying from a poison by attempting to stop the poison at its source. This source is a tower controlled by gorgons and filled with all kinds of monsters. Exploring the tower provides a memorable visual experience that resembles a dark fantasy anime style in the form of an 8-bit pixel art game. The visual style manages to be dark, horrific, and cute at the same time, and the character designs were done by Ryusuke Mita, known for creating the manga series Dragon Half. Astalon has a very unique feel to it that makes it stand out in the Metroidvania genre, and I recommend it to fans of the style who are looking for something a little bit different. Number 6, a title developed by White Rabbit and published by Serenity Forge, it's Death's Gambit Afterlife. A game that is every bit as much of a Souls-like action RPG as it is a Metroidvania. If you're looking for something that captures the feeling of a Soulsborne game in a 2D format, then this is the one for you. This game places a heavy emphasis on class choice, character building, and strategically building up your stats. This is also a case of an interesting comeback story for a game because while its initial release, Death's Gambit, was good in quality, it just wasn't outstanding. After getting feedback, much of the game was redone and it was greatly expanded. The result is a very impressive one because it went from being merely good to becoming something truly excellent that I would place among some of the best in the Souls-like and Metroidvania genres. The dark fantasy world players will explore is atmospheric, compelling, and a joy to behold. If you're seeking a full Souls-like experience in a 2D format, then Death's Gambit Afterlife will be the game for you. At number 5, we're gonna go with a series again, and it's the River City Girls games. The River City Girls series is an interesting spin-off of Kunio-kun, which which you might know as River City in Western releases. Developed by WayForward and published by Arc System Works, the games in this series take the beat-em-up genre in a very interesting direction by including a lot of RPG elements, making exploration a key part of the gameplay. While these elements had been present in some of the previous Kunio-kun games, they are much stronger here with a level system based upon experience points, obtaining equipment and new abilities to upgrade your characters, side quests, and a huge map to explore with more areas opening with story progression. The pixel art uses vivid and vibrant colors, portraying a variety of environments that can be explored in the different areas of the city. The character design has a great modern comic book look to it, and this look fits the theme and tone of the game quite well. I would personally recommend the River City Girls games even to people who don't normally play beat-em-ups, because the exploration and character building elements are strong enough that they might also appeal to players who lean more towards RPGs and action-adventure games. Also, really great soundtracks. At number 4, Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth. That's a mouthful, huh? Record of Lodoss War is a series of novels by author Ryo Mizuno that has been adapted into anime, manga, and video games, and is often considered a classic in fantasy fiction. Developed by Team Ladybug and co-published by WSS Playground and Playism, Record of Lodoss War Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth is a Metroidvania game with an original story involving characters from the series, and the production of it was supervised by Ryo Mizuno himself. Inspired by Castlevania Symphony of the Night and Ikaruga, it is a Metroidvania in the Igavania style that also implements a dual element system that changes Deedlit's offensive and defensive capabilities. The different areas of the labyrinth players will explore have a nice dark and surreal atmosphere to them. It fits the tone of the story and the characters very nicely, and it's also a very well animated game. The bosses are both incredibly fun and a sight to behold, so it's a game that plays just as lovely as it looks. While this one is fairly short for the genre, being around 5 to 6 hours, the experience is all high in quality, and I think it's well worth your time, especially considering it won't take much of it. At number 3, we head to the top 3 now. Developed by Kumi Souls Games and published by PlayStack, it's The Last Faith, a game that is often described as a combination of Blasphemous and Bloodborne, and that is a fairly accurate description, I'd say, because the combat, character building, and visual aesthetic do resemble those games in many ways. Though I would also add that it has its own sense of exploration and some callbacks to the Castlevania series, with walls that can be broken to reveal hidden rooms and passages, as well as certain areas that can only be accessed by obtaining a certain item whose use is hinted at rather than directly told. The visual style of the game is excellent. It takes on a gothic horror aesthetic, and both the environments and characters are very impressive. The Last Faith is a strong example of showing how things that are dark and gruesome can also be beautiful. I highly recommend this for fans of Souls-like Metroidvanias. Number 2, the Bloodstained Curse of the Moon games. Again, I'm going with a whole series here, but they are a spin-off of the Metroidvania Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, if you didn't know, and they are done in an 8-bit style. Developed and published by Inti Creates, they take a lot of influence in both visual presentation and gameplay from Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, a game that I mentioned earlier. The protagonist in both of these games is the demon slayer Zangetsu, and he can also obtain allies that can be switched between with the press of a button. These allies contain both characters from Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, as well as new characters unique to the Curse of the Moon games. Each character has different abilities, and certain areas of a level can only be accessed with a specific character, so there are different routes that you can take, and there are also multiple endings that depend on how you play the game. Both of the games have some of the best 8-bit style pixel art that I've seen, and the bosses are especially impressive. If you're a fan of Classicvanias, these are essential because they're among the best in that style. Hey, you made it to the end of the list. Thank you so much for sticking through all 15 games. We greatly appreciate you. On to another series, it's the Blasphemous games, with a recent sequel just released this year, at the time of this video recording anyways. Developed by the Game Kitchen and published by Team 17, the Blasphemous games are Souls-like Metroidvanias that excel on every level. Players will control the Penitent One as he attempts to end the suffering in the land of Custodia caused by a godlike being known as the Miracle. Custodia is filled with monsters and cursed people whose bodies have become distorted, with the visual style being influenced by the darker side of Western medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque art. Combat is brutal and visceral, and the deaths of both enemies and the Penitent Penitent one can be extremely violent. The tone of the game matches the gameplay, and the story focuses on overcoming adversity with grit and determination. The pixel art has a unique feel to it that is instantly recognizable as a Blasphemous game, and it has become iconic in the indie scene. I don't think a perfect game actually exists, but the Blasphemous games come as close to perfection as possible in that they succeed in the highest possible way in everything they set out to do. While the high difficulty and dark themes mean they won't be for everyone, these are masterpieces for those who appreciate such things and are must-plays for fans of both Souls-likes and Metroidvanias. So thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed seeing every game on this list and maybe even found a few that you've never played before. As always, consider supporting us further by subscribing, liking the video, sharing it with friends. That all helps a great deal. And if you'd like to support independent content further, head over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. So many wonderful perks there. It's a great way to help us continue to bring you indie gaming content. Also check out Nia once again over at twitch.tv/idreamofindiegames. She'll be playing a lot of these games that we've talked about here and more in the future every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Voice to the voiceless, and I will see you in the next video.